You're now listening to the show about the shit in life that's just a bit too much, from the perspective of stand-up comics. With our host, Carmelo Bongiovi. This week's topic, spots and tots. With our guest, Ophira Eisenberg. This is A Bit Too Much.
So we also got a dog. Like, I wasn't ready for a dog.
What are you doing?
Well, what I'm doing is losing my marital battles. It's what I'm fucking doing. Because I can't. I mean, I know this already. I've been with this woman for 14 years. I know I don't, or 15 years. I know I don't win the battles, but there's some where I'm like, no, I'm going to put. This is. I thought I was going to win this one.
Yeah,
I do want a dog.
Sure, everybody does. I mean, many people do.
Right. Everyone who's trustworthy wants a dog.
Yeah.
And the other
the right people.
Yeah, the other people have cats. But we were gonna. I told the story on a previous episode, but like, my wife was like, "Let's go just look at dogs. We have some time to kill." I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? We're gonna go look at dogs and not buy one?"
No, it doesn't work like that.
I'm gonna fall in love with the dog. My daughter is 4. She's gonna fall in love with the dog. You're gonna fall in love with the dog. And that's exactly what happened. And I was like, "No, we're not leaving here with the dog." And we have the dog in our house 4 days.
A puppy?
A 2-month-old, I guess 3 months now. But
that's
a 2-month-old
puppy. Insanity.
Yeah, I was like, we didn't have a second kid because we valued sleep. We got back to sleeping. Now we've got a puppy. We're crate training. It's like everything we just stopped doing for my daughter, including like sleep, fecal matter, all that stuff. Like all that stuff that we're like, oh, thank God we're past that. Now I'm doing again.
Oh, yeah.
Without even having a kid.
Yep. Yes, you are. Yes,
this
you
is
are.
a very special edition.
What town in Westchester are you in?
I'm in Peekskill.
Peekskill. Oh, okay.
It's the first time I've done an episode of this from home. Usually go into the studio. So I have this, it's not much to be desired on this background. I look like I'm in, what this looks like right now? This looks like I'm in a Mexican prison and I'm consulting with my lawyer over Zoom.
I actually kind of like it because I was thinking, I'm just in my bedroom because I live in a small Brooklyn apartment, and the other room, sometimes my husband's working from home, so he'll be there, but also it's a little bigger. Like I'm bragging right now about a Brooklyn residence. And so it just causes, from an audio point of view, it causes tons of echo. So I got to go in the smaller room. But this is my background because it's just my bedroom. And I can't I put up virtual in the back. I don't like virtual backgrounds. I know.
Nobody looks so, especially like for
so
this
ridiculous.
Kind of especially it's like one thing if you're on a business meeting and you don't want to show, your
laundry or whatever.
Yeah. But like for this kind of thing, it's like, what are you trying to?
It's just, this is it, everybody. This is it. So,
right. But
sometimes I'm like, it could be a little more professional, and then I just go, yeah, it is what it is.
Do you do your podcasts out of your home?
I do. Yeah, I used to do it out of a studio. But that became cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Sure. So I was like, and I will just say, like, it's so great to have a studio because, the audio quality is obviously pristine. And here I have to deal sometimes with street noise and definitely ambulances screaming by. But I don't miss the commute. I will say that I do not miss the commute. I have to leave my house so often for shows at night and stuff that I feel like sometimes I'm in perpetual motion. So I don't miss that. And I do, I will just say that I think our ears as people who listen to podcasts are pretty flexible. Like, I think we understand that people are recording out of their houses.
No, I mean, like, barring anything terrible quality wise, I wouldn't worry too much about that. What stresses me more out, because when I first made up the concept for the show, I was like, I'm doing it from home. I bought this like pop-up. I bought so much equipment. By the way, I'm using some for the first time now. This is like a year ago. I had a green screen I was going to pop up and all this stuff. And then I'm like, I can't do that. Not because of my situation. I think the quality would be fine enough.
Yeah.
Like, I got a kid. And this is my basement. She is on a floor right above me right now. There's no guarantee that she won't just come in here and fucking just.
Oh, that is a whole other thing. I mean, you have a floor between you, which is cool. And so that there's like an idea that there could be separation, like this floor. If you go down here, there's like a work going on, but we are like just 2 rooms, and having to explain now. My kid's 9, so it's like he can take a rule. He may not follow it, but he can take a rule. But the idea that I'm like, this room you can't walk into is pretty darn hard.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of what you do, though, like, being a comic and a parent, there's a work-life balance that everyone has to strike, but like,
I do not have it.
Right. Everyone is trying to achieve some version of a work-life balance, especially like when people work from home. Like those lines got blurred for like corporate workers too and stuff. But like, there is something so weird about what we do in terms of like, okay, so when we are home working, like if we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like getting a call interrupted. Not to say that that's easy for people, but it's not like getting a call interrupted. Like, totally. It's like, your kid walking into your podcast.
You know what? I say this, and on another level, I say this to my kid all the time about like going out to do stand-up, right? So I'll leave to go to get to my show, and he'll be like, no, like hang out finish this game. And I have to explain to him, if you're late for your office job, maybe you'll get reprimanded. Like, I cannot be late for a show. There's me being late for a show.
Yeah. Right. And in some ways, what we do is not as hour intensive, unless we're traveling. But not as hour intensive as a 9 to 5, but it is like more inconvenient in a lot of ways because you leave at night or in the evening to get there by night, and it's like, and it's also, it's also like during the day your kids got school and stuff like that, right? Like those are actually the hours you do. If in the perfect world, you would get those quality hours with your kid.
That's right.
You would be there at night. You would do story time. You would do all those things, which I was fortunate enough to. In the crazy time my daughter was born in 2021, I was fortunate enough in that weird circumstance to be home and be hands on because I had nothing going on.
Yeah, right.
I had nothing happening like what we all did, And
God, I was just thinking about that this morning. But yes, yeah.
And then it's like so I feel very fortunate that I got to be like so hands on. I got to literally when my daughter was first born, all the postpartum stuff, the physical stuff and everything that my wife was going through, I was able to be there and do the overnight thing. Like instead of going out and doing spots, I was just with this baby and I was just watching her and like this incredible bond that I think a lot of dads just like check off to like, oh, I'm there. I think that with dads, it's like so different. They just they get to check out.
Oh yeah, you know what? I have a joke in my act, and since have printed a T-shirt with it. Where, but the punchline, I'm not going to tell a joke, but the punchline is basically, I go, I get judgment. I think people think I'm a bad mom because I'm not there at night, and I travel a lot for my job. And I go, I don't think I'm a bad mom. I think I'm an average dad, because
it's so true. That is so the bar is so different for men.
So different. And also I get a lot of judgment. When I'm
going out at night for doing comedy.
Yeah. I just, you don't hear it. People are passive. Like I would welcome if someone just said it to my face, because that's almost easier to deal with. But instead you get these kind of subtle things where people go, like, so how does that work? Or someone that I actually really respect said to me point blank, well, it's great that your husband lets you do this. And they're not saying like, that sounds like he just let me out of my chains, but what they're just commenting on the fact that it's not done.
Yeah, it might not even be a sex thing. That might just be like maybe
a partnership.
You would maybe you would say that to the man in that situation.
You would not.
He probably would, but it could be said
could be. Oh, sure, of course, it all could be, my friend. All of this could be.
A lot of things could be said to men that are not. Yeah, no, it is a rough thing. Like my wife puts in way more hours in the day than I do, right? But like again, when I'm gone at night. And also it's like I'm gone on a Friday night, a Saturday. Like those are just like, for most people, that's like family time. You know,
that's family time. Oh, it is so fun. I mean, I certainly have a huge swath of friends who do not have kids, and the first thing you notice is the person who I used to be, because I had no idea, and how they have no idea. Because they'll be like, "Oh, let's whatever. Let's have a meeting to talk about some show we want to do," and then maybe that gets pushed. Oh, it got pushed from Tuesday to Thursday, and it's just like a phone call or a Zoom even. And they'll be like, well, I'm available during the day on Saturday or Sunday. And I'm like, yeah, I will never be available during the day to have a idle hour-long conversation with you on a Saturday or Sunday. Never. Zero times.
Yeah. And what you said about the line between like the dads and it's such a different standard. And like I think it's double, like, in what we do, you're ready, I think, as a female in this business, you already deal with some of that shit, right?
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
From the business, from the industry,
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
And then on top of that, you have like your friends or whoever, the people, or just people you meet. They're like
people you meet.
I think I would imagine. So like, the reaction I get when people find out I'm a comic, they're like, oh, that's cool, right? But then like they don't really get down to they might have the initial same reaction with you, but then when they get down to the conversation about parenthood, you might get that question where I don't. They don't go like,
okay, wait,
tonight.
Can we just back up for a second? When you say, hey, I'm a stand-up, do they go, oh, that's cool? Or do they look at you like I get looked at with insane surprise? Like, oh. Like, well, it is the furthest thing they could have ever imagined on the planet.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes, yeah, because it depends on the context in which you meet someone. Because like, I could talk to like another dad because our kids are friends or whatever, like 15 times, job never comes up, so they just don't even imagine it.
Sure.
And then when you say it, they're like, "Wait, really?" But I don't think it's as much of like, that's impossible. Like, what do you mean? I don't. No, I think the reaction I typically get from just like, the regulars out there is like, oh, wow, that must be the coolest thing ever. It's like, this is so much of it that's really not. Most of it is not that cool, right? It's amazing, but it's also a little fucked up.
It's like so much more. Yeah.
Yeah. But
is it so fun? Is it so fun?
Yeah. It's so fun. And then they start asking like, you talk about what do you talk about? Things like when people ask me, we're in the lamest fucking situation. Like we're at a playground watching our kids fucking eat dirt, and they're like, "You're going to talk about this in your act?" I'm like, "What about this strikes you as anything anybody would
always
want?" I don't even want to be here right now. Why would I draw other people into this experience?
I love it when there's some situation happens and it's just like, it's just some dumb situation. And then someone will just circle their hand in the air like, oh, are you going to write a joke about all this? It's like,
yeah.
No,
you are the farthest thing from my mind when
I'm just trying to get home. I'd like a nap.
Yeah. Like sure, we write about things that we go through, but like, this is not one of those things. It's interesting because so my wife has a pretty serious, like corporate job, and she's got a huge role at her company, and she will get that same reaction you're talking about for like work travel.
Oh,
as
yeah.
if she has a fucking choice, as if she would want to go to half of these places. Some places are super cool, and my wife in her career has done things and like covered content for brands in France, and she's done all this cool shit. But sometimes it's like, oh, you got to go to like the middle of nowhere, like in Washington State, and
I was just driving through the middle of nowhere in Washington State, and we always think of like Seattle, and then maybe you think of Olympia, but there's a lot in between. And you know what? It isn't just beautiful pine trees and hippies and hikers. It is trucks and truckers and shitty diners and a whole lot of nothing.
Right. That's so much of the country. And like, I mean, really, that's like, you probably described half of this country. You're from Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm from Canada.
Yeah. I feel like when you're in the middle of nowhere in Canada, it's beautiful. I feel like I could be wrong about that.
But sparse. It's definitely sparse. But even it's so funny. We're just talking about winter this morning. My sister and I, who is right now in Ottawa, which is it's the DC of Canada. Just so you know, Ottawa is the nation's capital. Not far north from both of us, like straight up north, basically from both of us, more or less. And it is, it's a little cold there. I mean, it's winter, but it's cold. However, Montreal is just colder. Montreal is on the lip of the St. Lawrence Seaway, which just gives it that extra coldness from the water of where it is. And she was just saying that in Ottawa right now, there's all these advisories, right? They're not keeping the kids home from school because a snow day in Canada is like, that's redundant. So there's no such thing. Like you have to call in the National Guard. Like it's got to be something so extreme. This just doesn't happen.
It's almost snow day, and that means you're going to school. Yeah,
it's a snow day. Of course, it's a snow day. So but there's right now. There's a bunch of weather advisories even in Ottawa for like extreme cold, or they also have this icy rain falling from the sky, which is kind of dangerous. And she was like, it's even worse in Montreal, but Montreal so used to it. No advisories.
Yeah.
They're like, what did you expect? February. Other questions?
Yeah. We don't like this either.
But I do find like I've traveled a lot through Canada, and when you hit smaller communities that even have like a theater, like let's say a smaller community that, and I'm not saying like they have sometimes the theater could be in their college or university. That's like the one theater for the town. That's very common. Yeah. But sometimes they still have an arts house, but they may not have a medical facility. You know what I mean? Like it is interesting how quickly it becomes very small and very isolated in terms of goods and services. Like they might literally have 3 doctors.
Wow.
If something really bad happens to you, you will need to go to the next big town for the real care.
Right. When did you come to New York, by the way? It was
20 years ago, basically. Yeah. So
you became a mom and like, did you start your career here?
I didn't. I started in Toronto, and then I really wanted to try it in the bigger fish, in the bigger pond, be a little fish in a big pond, basically. And I thought the only foresight I've ever had in my life is I thought I should move to New York while I still don't care about that I'm broke. Like I was broke in Toronto. I thought I don't really care that I'm broke. So I should just do it now while I still don't care. And then I moved to New York, and I was like, I thought I was broke. I was rich. Now I'm broke.
New York will unlock a brokenness in you that is so goddamn depressing. Like, when the expression, people are like, I don't have 2 pennies to rub together. It's like, well, in New York, those are like 2 crack vials. It's like, that is a deeper level of poor in New York. But you're fucking right, because you make that move when you're young. And one of my biggest sort of mistakes is that I straddled like 2 careers for so long. I worked in advertising.
Okay, yeah, of course.
As I was a comic, and I was a comic first, like in college, and then I started this media career. And part of me thought, at first, I thought like it's also creative. It's kind of like, but it's super corporate. Is what I quickly realized. It's not really creative in that way.
You're in
creative
the marketing field.
It's creative business. It's not creative art.
Yeah.
And but when I was younger, I could I didn't make that move because I wanted the fallback. I wanted the salary and I wanted the fallback, and I was able to do it. You know what I didn't take into account? Like how much my knees would hurt, how much my back would hurt, how hard it is to just get up after a gig and go to an office. Like I didn't realize that because when you're 22, I've had this conversation a million times with younger people. When you're 22 and someone who's 35 doesn't feel that far away, tells you, oh, it's going to hurt so much more when you're my age. And you're like, you're not 50. What are you talking about? You're not 60. You're not 70. Like you think it's like, oh, that's a later thing. And then it's like, no, when you hit your 30s, it starts hurting. And then I became a dad also in my 30s. And then at some point I was like, I've got to just do the one thing. And if I'm going to pick one, it's going to be comedy. But like I had to make that choice. And I do really wish I made the move earlier when I had less on the line, in a way, or like I had more energy to do it, and it was okay that like kind of what you just said. Sometimes, I don't want to like necessarily have these regrets, but I do sometimes think like I could have really put a lot more into it.
Well, it's all, because I go the other way and I go, I wish I would have, just because everything's always, I wish I would have, honestly.
Yeah.
Part of me goes like, oh, so I could, I don't wish that I would have stayed in Canada, but I will, just because that wasn't the right choice for me. But I do know I do know some Canadian comics that I kind of started with who did stay in Canada, and because it is sort of a small pond, but so you can become, there's going to be a handful of ways to become a player, but you will become a player. There's less work, but there's also places to work. So it's sort of convoluted what I'm saying, but it's like there could be easily a place for you.
Right. You might not get as much work or as big work or as high paying work, but you can certainly.
You probably will get work, and it won't be. You'll be mad probably because it's not in America, and they always talk about that, and they are, because I think just like any other, America still runs so much of the entertainment, even though that could very much change. And I think as we get more global, it is. But there's this feeling if it's not there, like if it's not on American Netflix, what is it, right?
And in comedy, it's not, it goes even farther than that. Cause then it's like comes down to like 4 cities. It's not even just America. Like then when you're in America, it's like, I have to be, for a long time I have to be in New York or LA.
Right.
So, then you have these pockets like Chicago or Boston and stuff like that. Obviously a lot of huge.
Nashville and Denver. Those are the two new comedy towns.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying now there's more Austin, like.
Yeah. Right. Austin. I always forget Austin.
Now there's more.
Purposefully. Now I always forget Austin purposefully.
Well, yeah, you forget it because it's what it's surrounded by. That's always my feeling about Austin. I'm like, yeah, Austin's cool. Like, yeah, Austin's cool. Austin, like if I could carve Austin out, some sort of carving tool and put it nearby. Yeah, sure, that's cool. But it's like I am still in Texas.
But then with comedy towns, you just don't know. Like you don't know what's going to happen. Atlanta supposedly is a pretty good scene that is building all the time, and now with LA. Not that I think like LA isn't going to ever exist again, but the devastation is huge. And I know from already people that I knew that were working as writers or in production were already unemployed for the last year or so as television has completely changed and the way we're consuming content has completely changed. So they were at a loss as to why they were living there. Because, they just felt like they couldn't get in the game after they lost a job after either the pandemic or the strike, and they couldn't get back in. There just wasn't the work. And then this happens. And so all of these businesses are destroyed.
Yeah, literal studios and everything else is burnt down.
So I don't know where that leaves everybody, but I do, a lot of my friends that I know there are leaving.
Yeah, I have an interesting question. Do you think that there are better in comedy towns in terms of, and I'll explain this a little further, but like better for a parent who's a comic? Do you think a better balance, let's say in LA where there's like 3-4 major venues, rather than like where you've got to go all over New York? And yes, LA, you're sitting in traffic, but like you're going to the, like, know where the destinations are. You're not like, oh, there's some weird pop up in Brooklyn. So, they're all over the place in New York.
Yeah. My perception of it is, and could be wrong, is that the people that are working in LA, like making a living, like that's going to be the baseline. You have to make a living. So I don't think that there is enough work there as a stand-up going to do spots to make a living in LA. Right? Yep. Yeah. I think you have to travel a great deal, or you hopefully have a writing job or something going.
Yeah.
But you're not going to, there's just podcasts. Not there. Yeah. I know some comics here and they are not, none of them have families. So they're needing a little bit less income. I would just say, I'm sure everyone wants the same amount, but whatever, they're wanting less, who are, because they are so in at a club in New York and really good at their job. They get so many spots in a week, they can squeak by.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. When you're doing 8 spots, in 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even more.
Even more. Yeah.
So, so that, I mean, I don't think that's ideal or anything, and it's not a lot of them, but I think so New York just has way more possibility in terms of live stuff. And then, there's spots at the clubs, of course, but then there's just shows. And whether you're doing something in Brooklyn, the Bell House, or one of these kind of larger theaters or production places,
pay a little more.
They pay a little bit more. And then there's fundraisers, and then there's this, and it does. I think that there is like Atlanta. I know some parents who are comics in Atlanta, and they have multiple kids, which always freaks me out because I'm like, wow, you've got 3 and you're doing this. And they have, there's a little less opportunity, but they are self-starters and they put together shows, and they are somehow working quite a lot and seem to have a better quality of life.
Do you feel though, like, as a parent, who does what you do, because there's also like there's what other people say, but then there's also the sort of guilt that lives in our heads when we're not home. Like, do you find yourself, because I'm just asking because this is my experience, making concessions of, like, let's say parenting styles or things that you would normally be like, I'm going to put my foot down on this thing with my, I just find myself being more of a pushover because I have to make up for, don't get me wrong, I'm home a lot with my kid too, like during the day, like, like there is a lot of time spent, but like, then when I feel guilty about not being around, it's like, I kind of have to give up. Not that I have to, I feel like sometimes I feel compelled to like give up my stance on something, or like I make compromises to almost out of guilt, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, I stopped doing this, but I was like the crazy buyer of toys and things. That was definitely a compensation thing. And then, I mean, on one level, because now we're in February, but a few months ago, like in the fall, I was traveling a lot, and I just had to, because it was for good money, and there's no way I was going to say no to it. And I wasn't pleased that it was so much, but I was just like, I have to. That's just what this is sometimes. And it was a lot of time. And then I would come back and I would see my son's life and behavior, and I wouldn't like something, or he would be a jerk about something, and I would literally go, well, that's what happens when you're being raised by your father. This is who and I would feel
but you guys can both do that to each other. Well, that's what happens when you're at home.
That's right.
But, that's marriage right there.
Yeah. And then I definitely would be more lenient, because I was out of the routine. So when my kid would go, oh, can I have another, and he's manipulative. Like he smells it all out. He's not dumb. These kids are so smart that way. So he would be like, oh, Dad's not around. Mom, can I have another hour of iPad? And I'd be like, oh, you done your homework? Yeah. Did you do your chores? Yeah. Okay, sure. And then my, husband would come home and he goes, we said absolutely no. I'm like, oh, you didn't tell me.
Yeah, you gotta communicate that.
Yeah, and so there's plenty of time where I've been a total pushover, because I'm not and I do feel like even when people talk about newborns, they're like, oh, it's so easy in the beginning, and I'm like, yeah, but they're like, oh, the lack of sleep isn't that bad. I'm like, no, that's because you're on day 4. When you are at day 100 and the amount of sleep deprivation has really just piled up, that's when you start to feel it's not day 5.
It's the conversation I have had so many times since having my daughter is, you do not, for people who either don't have kids or they're about to, or, or like the ones that are delusional because they're 3-week-old, is like,
yes. A handbag. That's the handbag phase. They're just wandering around.
Yeah, that's true.
Going to movies. They're like, what? How is this so hard? And you're like, I don't want to say just fucking wait. But, I didn't even ask you if I could swear. Sorry.
When you talk to them and you're like, you don't understand what's about to fucking happen to you. When there's a reason why sleep deprivation is used on like war criminals.
Oh yeah.
Prisoners of war, I should say. Like it is, my wife and I, we could hopefully, we're out of it enough now in this terms of the sleep deprivation to to acknowledge it and almost laugh about it, but it's kind of not funny. It's so maddening when you are 100 days, like you said, like you're still in that infant phase, but you're months in, and you and your kids. Well, because you know what the fucking thing is that you think every time they hit a stage, you're like, oh, good, it's over, got it. And it's like 3 days later, there's like, and of course, if you do the research, there's all these like sleep regressions and all these things, like there's all these developmental things that kick in, and you could understand the science behind it, but it doesn't make sense to you when you're not doing the research. When you're just there and you're like, oh, good, she sleeps good now. And I've definitely done eating and sleeping. I've definitely been like, great eater, great sleeper. And then like 3 days later, I felt like blood was coming out of my eyes when I was so tired. And I'm like, a kid an infant is probably, it will make you cry harder than anything in the world in terms of how hard it could be.
Oh God, yes.
Those days.
Absolutely agree.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. And you're powerless. And it's very high stakes. It's like all the different things are coming at you at the same time. It is
high stakes. Yeah. It's like, oh, if the kid's not sleeping, you're like, then your mind starts, because they're also sleep deprived and you're worried and all this stuff compounds, and you're like, oh my God, I know how important sleep is for their development. Like, did you start fucking psyching yourself out?
I'm a good sleeper. But as an adult, even, my whole life, my husband is like someone who he hates sleep, and he's a fairly early riser. That's just who he is.
I like sleep more than anything.
I love sleep so much, and I'm good at it. I'm really good at it. And the idea, so I get anxiety when I'm like, oh my God, I'm only going to have 5 hours of sleep, and then I'm going to be really tired. Like, I have freakouts.
Yeah, and then you stay up longer because you're freaking out.
I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? I'm going to look like shit, and then and so the whole thing, is huge. And I was reminded that during the pandemic, when everyone was kind of obsessed with sleep on different levels and just in their house, how many companies in bedding and mattresses and anything bed sleep pajamas really profited, because everyone was like, had nothing to spend their money on if they had money, and they were throwing it at these kinds of things. But you do that as a parent too. You throw so much money at any tiny possible solution that might help you sleep or your kids
sleep and eat. When you're like, oh my God, I mean, we had every goddamn device. We had something that like steamed food and blended it for us.
Oh, we totally had that. We borrowed that from a friend, but that thing was amazing.
Those things are great. And it's like a multi-cooker, but for kids, and it's like, yeah. And we had that. We had fucking like the, once you got out of the like real swaddle thing, we had the like, the swaddle blade, like those little, like, looks like they're like a fucking flying
sleep sacks.
Yeah, the sleep sacks where they look like, it looks like they're like hang gliding,
Yeah, or like a flying squirrel or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like this, and all these. I mean, the thing after thing after thing of like, oh well, they need it, and you go fucking nuts, and you go insane. And what's funny is, I have like a reverse analogy to your, or a reverse version of like your like bad mom, average dad thing, where it's like, because I'm so anxiety ridden and paranoid and super hands on, I get the opposite of what you get. I get the like, am I a great dad or am I actually just an average mom? It's like I have the opposite thing, because people. And it's got to be maddening for my wife, because it's like she's doing more, but at the same time, people look at what I do. Well, I'll say this: other moms look at what I do, and they're like, they like just praise it. Dads look at what I do as like, that's
magic.
That's no. It actually comes with a lot of judgment. It's like, oh, why are you doing it? Like, they don't say it like that, but it's like, why you're doing all that? Like, the amount of materials I read every fucking book and blog. I mean, a lot of it was sourced by my wife, but I was like, I go down rabbit holes. I then will read the thing and then do like 17 offshoots of research on it.
That's
for
great.
every little thing. No, it's great because it is
well informed.
No, you're right. I am a fantastic dad. No, you're right. I'm an amazing dad to the average mom. But like but you know what it is? Like it's for my own sanity. I do the work now because when I'm like in that infant phase, let's say I have a horrible night, and then I'm, like, or by horrible night I mean like we didn't sleep at all, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna do all this research. I'm gonna try to understand what's going on. So tomorrow night, when this happens again, I can, like, in my mind, I could see light at the end of the tunnel because I know what the phase is. Like, it's so much of it is just, I feel like so much of that thing that breaks you when you're a new parent is just a mindset.
It's
of
just
going,
how.
Because you feel like it's never going to fucking end. Those nights, and everyone's, it's the thing they always say, like long days, short years, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Like, it all feels like it flies by so fast, but when you're in those like long nights, it's like you'd think when you're holding your child, if they're crying at 3 a.m, they won't eat. You don't know if it's gas, but you don't know what it is. Like, normally you know what it is, but some nights you don't know what it is.
No.
And you think, I might just die now. Like, this is just going to be the end of my life, because it feels like it's never going to end. So the knowledge helps counter that.
Okay, so did you, out of all of this, since you are now a bank of knowledge on a bunch of stuff, was anything that kind of bubbles to the top that was really helpful?
Oh, in terms of the actual like research? Well, I think one of those things is understanding that first year, this is just like a general thing. Is that it's like every phase is going to come so quick. And it's good. Like, it's almost like it's almost like there is a higher being that's like, it's going to be like this on purpose. It's going to be good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. You know what I mean? And like, just to fuck with you a little bit. Like, but it also, like, in the good, like, okay, they slept for 3 days, like, great nights. You're like, you feel more rest, even if you're not sleeping that well. You feel like, it's manageable, I guess, is my point.
Right now, you're like, okay, I get it. We can do this. And then it's like, oh, you can? How about this?
Yeah, how about this? You're like, not only is the sleep thing going to get affected, there's going to be another problem.
Yes.
There's going to be a color of her shit that comes out that you have to question. There's going to be, and by the way, you know what I wasn't prepared for as a dad? This is very graphic, but you know what I wasn't prepared for? Is where the shit goes when you have a daughter. Like, in the diaper, within the diaper, where it all goes.
Where it is. Everywhere.
Right. And like, but on boys, it's all on the surface, right? So it's just like, whoa. And like, I would have been prepared for that. And like, that's one of those things when you're early on, you're like, and it's one of those, like, 3 a.m, you're like, I just finally got her down. And you're like, oh, that fucking reeks. And then you're like, oh no, I gotta, like, now wake her up to change her diaper. Those are the things that are maddening. You're like, when you don't have a kid, you could go, all right, I could feed the kid, hold the kid, rock the kid, all these things
back and forth, read stories.
But how about when 7 things happen at once at 3 a.m?
So I know. And then
that's the advice I could ever give to people is, because I don't have that much, like, real advice, because it's so different for every person, but, like, is just do the fucking research and understand why things are. It's not going to make things better, but it's going to, if you have the knowledge of why it's so bad, I think it helps you get through the night.
I do remember now, my kid was probably just over 1. We had moved him, so he was still in a crib, but he could stand up and hold onto the rail. Okay. Yeah. And he didn't happen that often, but man, scared the hell out of me. He puked in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And then fell asleep in it. So when I got up in the morning, I heard him crying, and I went in. He was standing, holding the rail, and his entire bed was filled with, like, reddish puke, and it was all over him. And I was like, you don't expect that going in.
Yeah.
Not the image.
Yeah. It's red. It's red. Red is.
And it was reddish. Yeah. Because I can't remember what puree we had steamed up in our little Babaloo or whatever that thing was called. But it was definitely food related. But of course, my first thought is blood. Anyways, it was.
Yeah. So, it's like the scene in Carrie with the fucking yeah, that's horrifying. You know, this is one of those like only like people will understand this logically, but you only actually understand it if you've had these nights where you feel. You ever see an animal at the zoo that like walks in a circle and you're like, and then you like find out, oh, that's because they're like going through
bored,
emotional distress.
Yeah.
You know, that's what there were nights. I'll never forget this. It was this little carpet that we had in my daughter's nursery that had it was like flowers on it. And I would just do this pattern of stepping on the flower petals from one to the other as I was rocking her because it fucking somehow grounded me a little bit. It's almost like I was doing a Rubik's Cube to like calm myself or like stress balls. And I remember rocking her till she would fall asleep in her. This is like, 2 months in, and hitting these petals in a certain pattern. If you saw that, which I'm sure the baby monitor was catching, I must have looked like a fucking serial killer. Like I was just hitting these petals, like right foot goes there, left foot goes there, back step to that one, back step to that one. Right there. It was almost like this weird, like I was making this little like hexagon shape pattern of walking because that's where the flower petals were. Because and it's not a conscious thing I did until I found myself in the like third, fourth night doing that. I'm like, oh, what am I doing right now? But it was like, it takes me back to a place. Like if I see a carpet with a flower, I get like PTSD. If I see like a floral carpet, I'm
that's hilarious. Cause you're like, maybe I should step on petals in a sequence.
Yeah.
I could easily see myself doing that.
Yeah. It's almost like an OCD thing, but it's not really, it's not really OCD. It's like your body is just going into overdrive. And then, then your kid, like you don't have to rock your kid to sleep anymore. And you find yourself, you're talking to your friends and your arms are full and you're just rocking no baby in your hands.
Well, I mean, you said it's like OCD, but I do think that, and not to make light of anyone that suffers from anything. I just want to say that, okay, to your listeners and watchers. But I do think that you, and part of it is the mundane aspect of a lot of these things that you have to do. It's not incredibly intellectually stimulating, and it's stimulating in a way that I feel like I don't usually had. It wasn't enough stimulation. So your overactive brain. It was, I mean, even some of the stories, and like when your kid wants to read the same story 15 times, because that's where they're at.
Yeah. And
you're not going to say no. I mean, that would be terrible. So you just do it.
Are you fucking kidding me? We read this one. How many times do you want to say that? We read this.
Yeah, idiot. Why would you want to read it again, dummy?
Yeah. You want me to go back to the same, not even the whole story, the same page? You want me to read the same page, like 2-page sequence back and forth? I mean, it's maddening. It actually is
so mundane. And I do think it makes your brain like there's no wire. We always say rewiring the brain, which I now find so funny because I'm like, we should all understand that's a metaphor. Like if anyone thinks they have wires up there, that is not how it works. Go take a couple looks at brains.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I have wires. They were all cut during my early parenthood.
Yeah. So whatever thoughts that are usually sparking are not being sparked. And I think it does something wild to you.
Yeah. People say very hallmarky shit, and they're like,
sure. Platitudes.
And they go like, hey, yes, you know what? A kid does slow you down, but maybe that's the reason why they're there, to slow you down. It's like, no, it actually, here's the thing. Okay, here's what I always think. We all grew up and thought our parents were fucking nuts, right? All of us thought our parents were nuts. And the reason why we all thought they were nuts is because we broke them. Like they weren't like, so I wasn't nuts, right? Before my kid. And I'm not saying I am now, but I think at some point, and then whatever problems are on the horizon, and then, then I'm like the like an older dad and my kid's in her teens. And she's like, yeah, my mom and dad are crazy. The same way we all said our mom and dads are crazy. I like, yeah, because parenthood drives you fucking nuts. Like, of course, like the hallmarky shit that I agree. Of course it is rewarding. Of course it is amazing. But like, it's like, do I even have to say that? I think you always feel like you have to say the positive parts. You always have to be like,
right. Because we still live in a world where people are like, it is the best thing to happen in your life. You're like, right. Yeah. I got to start with that. And then I can complain.
Right. It's yeah. I have more complaints than those things. But of course it is a fucking amazing, and I love my kid, and I would like kill for it. Like yes, okay. Do I have to say that? We know that, you know. Well, maybe you do have to say it. Maybe because some parents really don't like their kids. So maybe you do.
I mean, I feel like I know parents who don't like their kids, or at least whatever phase that kid is in.
In that moment,
I have met parents, especially with teenagers and young adults, who just go a little bit like hands up in the air. They're like, "Well, I tried." And a little bit, they've got that going.
Yeah.
And then
you're like, your kid's an asshole. Like, I know.
Yeah, and I mean, my kid was definitely an asshole and still has asshole qualities, but a few years ago he was, definitely that.
What person goes through life and doesn't pick up asshole qualities at some point? Like, I mean, you know an adult, like even the nicer adults, like they've never been an asshole to you. Like, why do we expect this like math? Or like almost a mathematical way of parenting kids. Like, I say this thing, you do this thing. I say
God,
they're still creatures that adapt to their fucking surroundings,
and they don't know. You know, I was watching and I was watching this parent this morning at drop off, and I was like, "You're doing exactly what I would have done." And now that I'm hearing you do it, I realize how goddamn ridiculous it is. Which there was, someone working for the school that was shoveling the slush off of the main like cement kind of foyer where everyone enters, and her kid, who was probably your daughter's age, 4 about then, like early kindergarten, kicked, like he just had made a little pile of slush, kicked the slush. What kid wouldn't do that? What kid wouldn't do that? Natural.
My daughter's never saw a puddle she didn't step in, a pile of dry leaves she didn't.
Right.
Exactly.
And the mother immediately reprimanded the son and was like, "You go apologize to that man. Look how hard he's working trying to make this thing, and then you just go and like ruin it." And I was like, and I heard it and I was like, that was me exactly. And the problem that now I understand, because we live, my parents were just and I'm quoting someone else who said this, and I was like, that is perfect. My parents were adults that had kids. We cannot be those people anymore. We are totally the way parenting goes now. You are totally involved. It's too much. Actually, there's been articles written about we are too involved, and the way that culture right now expects parents to be involved in their kids' life is driving all of it too crazy. And we are responsible for their emotional well-being. And I know that what that woman did in that moment was not have her child look at a pile of slush and go, "Oh, I get it. This guy is shoveling and cleaning up, and then I ruined his job." She just made the kid feel shame. That's it.
Yeah. There's a thing where your kid will then they then start to learn there's ways to just appease you and say what you want them to say. They're not learning the fucking lesson.
Or all they're feeling in that moment is, I feel shame again. I'm always feel shame. I always feel shame. I'm always doing things wrong. I don't know what they are particularly. I don't know why. I can't make those other connections. I just feel bad. And on parts, I think, I don't know. I think I was raised with buckets of shame, for sure. And do I think like that, and I think we all, I joke about this, I think we all walk around kind of going, like, we were all raised in different ways, and look at us, we're fine, we're this, we're that, we're functional. And I go, and I'm always like, no, we are in therapy, we're taking ketamine, we're under weighted blankets, like we're a mess. Do not walk around like it all worked out.
I know. It's maddening. Sometimes I talk a lot about like that I will never hit my kid. I know I won't. I'm not gonna. And it's like, and then people really jump to that, like, but you gotta. And I'm like, no, you don't gotta, because you know what? My dad said you gotta, and I still can't have somebody walk behind me without flinching. And I'm fucking 39, and like it wasn't healthy, and it's not because he was an abusive guy, but because he's he's an Italian immigrant, and he's like, that's what you hit your kids when they don't listen. It's just what, like I could not justify it, but I can understand why it was done. But I cannot in my right mind think it was a good idea, or that it did anything. Like, it made me afraid of him, and so I didn't challenge him. But so that's discipline for some people. But I also
did you learn your lesson? But did you learn your lesson?
I was an asshole. I was such. I would like. I really didn't grow. Like I was not a well-behaved kid outside of my parents' house. Like I was running fucking wild in those streets of Queens, New York. Like I was not, you know what I mean? Not that I was like a horrible person, but I was, you know, I was definitely a challenging like teenager and stuff. And I just tried to hide. And then I came home and I played the good boy because I was
because you knew. I mean, I did that too, honestly. In high school, when I look back at who I was in high school, I took drugs. Like I took drugs. I smoked weed. Sometimes we skipped class and did mushrooms or acid. And but I had good grades, and it was really the curriculum was easy enough because I don't think now when I look back at it, I go, it's not like I could have gotten into a top school with the way I see some people think, but clearly it was easy enough that I could kind of skim by, and I was pretty good when I came home, and that was how it all worked out.
Yeah. You know, that's a good segue into the end of this thing because the reason why my co-host Ken Krantz is not here is probably because he's also on shrooms right now. I think he thinks he's in like a Panamanian rainforest, but he's in New Jersey.
Well, whatever rainforest you want to create.
Well, Fire, do you have anything you want to plug before we end this? You know, this is gonna air in like mid-March. It's a little ahead of time. But
okay, sure. Yeah. Yes, indeed. A couple things. One is we talk so much about parenting. I have a podcast that I host where I talk to comics. You need to come on it, obviously, called Parenting is a Joke. And I specifically like talking to stand-ups because as we discuss this creative career marries very poorly to being a parent, yet so many of us demand to do it. So I like doing that. That's twice a week, that podcast, because I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And then I perform live all throughout New York at the clubs, and I also go on the road. So hey people, if you want to come see me live, just follow me on the socials at Ophira E.
All right. Thank you so much, Ophira. This is a Bit Too Much podcast on all the socials, a Bit Too Much podcast. Like, comment, subscribe. You know, if you don't want to hear me talking about being a dad and complaining all the time, give me a fucking topic. All right. Don't stop. I feel like I get complaints because I'm
fucking do something around here. How about that? Oh, really?
Yeah,
a problem.
You have no part in this. You have no part of this. You tune in every fucking week and you don't have to contribute at all. You give me a topic. I'll talk about your fucking hemorrhoids or whatever the fuck you have going on. But give me something. Just don't send pictures of that. But give me something. Ophira, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Talk soon.
Talk soon.
Thanks, guys.